Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the joint Fourth Sunday Taleem with Masjid Al Taqwa and the Ifrin Baha Center. Dr. Aisha Al-Amin, on behalf of the resident Imam Tariq Al-Amin, and the Taleem Committee, which is myself, Dr. Lionel Allen, and Dr. Gloria Bashir, welcome you. And please note that this recording, as well as our khutbahs, are on our YouTube channel. So please subscribe if you have not done so already. I'd like to start us off in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. Thee alone do we worship, and thy aid we seek. Show us the straight way, the way of those who please you, the way of those who please you, those who do not go astray. We have such a dynamic leader and speaker today, both a leader as our resident man for many years, and as our leader in understanding COVID-19 and many health matters within the community. So today we will have Dr. Imam Ramadan facilitating a discussion and a webinar around the impact of COVID-19 in our lives. And so without further ado, I pass the mic over to Dr. Ramadan.
We thank you for that introduction, Dr. Al-Amin. And we certainly do appreciate the Taleem Committee for this invitation, opportunity to address this important matter in our lives now. Over a year and a half ago, COVID forced its way into our lives. It came uninvited. We didn't expect it. To us, it came out of nowhere. But since it has been here, it has infected and affected virtually every part of our lives. Individually, our families, our community, our social institutions, our politics, the government, and international affairs. COVID has had that sort of impact. COVID, just to put things in perspective, it has now caused 675,000 deaths in the US alone. And this is more than the 1918 pandemic, Asian flu pandemic. It only had 672,000 deaths. So we have exceeded that. And it has been a major stress test on all of us. It has been a stress test on our country, on our institutions, family. It has caused a revolution. It reveals the weaknesses and the areas of vulnerability that these institutions have. And it is also sort of worn on our social connective tissue. We can see that it has brought out some things that perhaps were deep that we weren't even aware of. All this due to a virus. So our concern is, how have we been coping with it? How do we cope with it going forward to minimize its impact on our families and community and all? So we of the Muslim Health Consortium, every opportunity that we get, we want to address this, because we know it is having its impact on our mental health, our family's health, and all of us know someone that has been lost to COVID. So at this time, I'd like to turn it back to our host, who will bring the video on that has been prepared by the Muslim Health Consortium, and we'll have questions, Q&A afterwards, inshallah. Thank you.
Are you able to see the video?
Yes.
All right.
Peace be unto you. My name is Coral Kadar, and I am the convener of the Muslim Health Consortium. The Muslim Health Consortium was loosely formed in 2003 among a few dedicated nurses and physicians to provide health, education, and health resources. We gathered together to help pilgrims that were in the city of Mecca when we were traveling, and we had a lot of people becoming ill. This group of people served tirelessly to help those who were in need. And when COVID hit, we reorganized ourselves to provide the same sort of services. So we formally reorganized in March of 2020 to provide accurate, useful information to our families and communities about the COVID-19 pandemic. We've striven to provide advocacy as well. Today, we are very concerned about the Delta variant and preparing communities to handle this ongoing pandemic. We are keeping the theme of perseverance in our focus and helping others to realize that there's power in perseverance. We have today a wonderful panel of medical and science professionals that are going to help to keep us strong moving forward in dealing with the challenges of the current pandemic. We have Dr. Mikhail Ramadan. We have Ron Foster Sharif. We have Nurse Tanya Howell, Dr. Nurjahan Abdul Haq. We have Sharon Abdullah, and we have Dr. Roshana Hood. And thank you all for coming and being with us. We're gonna open up with Dr. Ramadan. Dr. Ramadan is from Clemens, Michigan, and he had practiced full-time emergency room
Can you hear?
emergency medicine for 40 years.
Okay.
Dr. Ramadan recently retired, and he has been a co-founder.
I'm trying to turn this down. This is too loud.
And is here today to help us to just get a handle on what has happened and where we are now. Dr. Ramadan, would you be so kind as to let us know?
I can't get this darn thing to turn down. What
Should
the?
be doing, and give us this little history of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Nurse Kadar. We would like just to give a brief history of what has happened with COVID, COVID-19, the coronavirus. It's been over a year and a half now. I recall at the time that I retired, there was no mention of the coronavirus. And then it came on the scene and spread rapidly. And before we knew it, it became a worldwide pandemic. And as you recall, at that time, under President Trump, we went into developing a vaccine under warp speed. And we must say to his credit and to the appropriate investments in the companies, vaccines were developed. After that, the rollout of the vaccines was sort of sluggish. And particularly in the communities of color, they got there slowly, and they were met oftentimes with suspicion. And there was a reason for that. Our history in this country with the Tuskegee experiment and other experiments on our people during slavery, we were slow to receive the vaccines. And this, we must say, has continued up until today. They were slow getting into our communities, and we were slow accepting them. The good thing about the vaccines is that they were very effective. We had 3 vaccines. They will be mentioned more in our presentation, but the vaccines were effective against the original coronavirus and against the Delta variant. This time last year, we were encountering spikes and surges. The virus was very deadly. Our hospitals were overrun. Our health professionals and first responders were being exhausted and overworked. ICUs were filled, and people were getting sick and dying. And then the Biden administration rolled out the vaccines at a faster rate than we thought, and we did see a positive impact. Shortly after that, the death rate and the hospitalization rates went down, and our community sort of went into a lull. We thought we had successfully defeated the viruses, but the new variant, the Delta variant, came to the forefront, and it took over. And I think our society had been locked down for so long and forced to wear masks and to follow the guidelines that we just loosened up everything. And now we are undergoing the result of that loosening with the Delta virus variant coming to the forefront, and in fact causing the same sorts of things that we saw in the first pass of the virus. The filling of the hospitals and the emergency rooms and the ICU units, and fatiguing the first responders. This is all happening again. And the problem is that we are now encountering a headwind with people who, those of us who are still suspicious of the vaccine, even though they have proven themselves. And those who are still have issues with the government and its sincerity. But this has been to our detriment when we now have millions and millions who have taken the vaccine and who have benefited from it. It's important for us to achieve a herd immunity, that the antibodies are present in the society, either from having been exposed to COVID or from the vaccine, that we can fight this coronavirus. That's what we're attempting to achieve. We're now at about 70% of the people in our country having received at least one dose of the vaccine, and we're working hard to get to increase that. So what we hope to do by achieving herd immunity is eradicate, if possible, the coronavirus. Otherwise, we risk it becoming endemic. That means existing ongoing at a very low level. So that fight is going on now, and some of my colleagues on this presentation will present more about that. Thank you.
We're so happy to have here with us Dr. Noor Jahan Abdul Haq. She is a board certified pediatrician from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And she's done so much. I'm not going to read her entire bio here because I'd be sitting here for half an hour, but I will say that she has opened her own pediatric clinic, Peace of Mind Pediatrics, to serve her community. And she has been working tirelessly along with her own family, keeping her family safe. As you said, Sharon is a mother of young children, the stress of taking care of her family, but she has been on the front lines since the very beginning, taking care of COVID patients and, doing her best to help us to persevere. So I want to bring on Dr. Jihan.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me. As mentioned, since March, we've been kind of in the thick of things. I was one of the few people that never closed my clinic. And so we had to figure out game plans and figure out how to keep our staff safe, how to keep our patients safe, and of course, not spread COVID within our own clinic and give it to our families. So very, very important point. I don't think a lot of people realize like what we go through to try to keep everyone safe. And so I know for one, masks have somehow become political. I don't really know how that became political, because when you go to other countries, masks are used to prevent illness or spreading illness, right? But we'll find people come in without their mask. And I'm like, we want to protect you just as much as we want to protect our staff, because we want to be here for you. And so I tell people this isn't political. I don't really care what your political beliefs are. But when it comes to children who are too young to be vaccinated, and to be honest with you, too young to make the decisions that we as adults should be making, right? The children didn't ask to go to the indoor, movie theater. The children may not have asked to do certain things, or they may have asked and they're waiting for the adult to give them that advice, right? So it's very important that we as parents make sure that we are taking a wise approach when it comes to our children and thinking to ourselves, how do we keep them safe? I see so many parents in grocery stores not wearing a mask and their child is wearing a mask sometimes. And they say, oh, well, I don't want them to get COVID. Well, the reality is, yes, vaccines often are helping, but with this new Delta variant, as mentioned, you can still get COVID. So you need to wear your mask as well so that you don't end up giving it to your child, okay? A lot of us aren't thinking like that. And then people say, well, then why get a vaccine if I can still get it? You may get it and just have a sinus infection, quote unquote, or a runny nose and a sore throat, versus your child who could end up with a very, a much worse situation. We're looking at the numbers. We're seeing increased hospitalizations of children with this Delta variant, especially in southern parts of the United States. It's really sad to see. They're actually seeing more children hospitalized than any other surge that we've had thus far. So when we go back to our January, it's way more. A lot of these children are also in the ICU. And one thing that I have noticed as a pediatrician is our children are not as healthy as they were pre-COVID. During this pandemic, children have been home. They've been eating. They haven't been moving. They haven't been getting vitamin D. Some have just stayed in and have just been playing video games. So what does that mean? Our children are less healthy. And so therefore, if they do contract COVID-19, then they may have a worse outcome. And that's not to scare people. That's to be thoughtful, because we're also about to embark on flu season. Last year, we didn't really have much of a flu season. So that means this year, it's probably going to come back. And it's going to come back probably a little bit stronger than it did, before, since we had a year with nothing, right? We are currently also seeing rhinovirus and RSV and hand, foot, mouth and strep. It's a bacteria, but it's always going to be around when students start going to school. So it's important that our children do wear masks in school so they can cut down on some of these viruses that they're getting. As a pediatrician, I am bombarded with COVID tests right now. It's just overwhelming how many people are seeking advice. Well, what do I do for my child? And it's just like, man, were they wearing a mask at school? No. When you went to your friend's house, were they wearing a mask? No. When you let them go to a sleepover? You guys, I understand we are tired and we want our children to go on living life. Completely understand that. But we have to figure out ways to do things safely. Maybe everybody goes camping outside in their own tents, right? If you want to have a sleepover. Trying to figure out ways to allow our children to still be children, but doing it in a safe manner. And I definitely feel that masks are very important. I know you're tired of me hearing that. Of vaccine for children, it has not been released yet for use for those under the age of 12. We have emergency authorization from ages 12 to 15 for the Pfizer, and we have usage for those 16 to 18, which is now FDA approved. And what you may start to see is that the dose of the vaccine for children is going to be different than the dose used for adults. And many people are going to say, well, why are they giving our kids less? It's not that. Children's immune systems are amazing. That's part of the reason why we give all of these immunizations when they're very young, because we can give them smaller amounts and then they still have a larger response. So in some of these studies, they're seeing almost 100% coverage from COVID-19. Of course, we'll see how things continue to go to see if it's still, that high, but it's just amazing how powerful our children's bodies are. I want you guys to keep that in mind and also think of ways, as mentioned before, how do I make sure my child's immune system is top notch, right? So that means we're drinking mostly water. We're exercising. You know what? We don't want to go around other people, but you have a backyard. If you don't have a backyard, is there a spot on the sidewalk that we can jump rope? Can we just do jumping jacks in the house? Whatever it may be, we have to make sure our kids are staying active. I've seen some children gain 40 pounds in this pandemic. And I'm not talking about teenagers. I'm talking about very young children. Making sure they're eating all the fresh fruits and vegetables. Very important, decreasing their processed foods. These are things that we have to continue. I know we get tired and we're stressed out as ourselves and then we're back to work, et cetera, and trying to make it all work, but we cannot give up because our children's lives are at stake. And if you've paid attention to any people who've had the COVID long hauler syndrome, there are even some children patients I've had, and they're like, you know what, doc, I'm always tired. I've never gotten my strength back since I had COVID. There are very rare cases of, children having myocarditis after having COVID-19, and therefore now they're not able to play the same sports that they were able to play before. So yes, I understand most children will have a very short course of COVID. They won't be that sick, but if we can prevent them from getting it, why not take our shot, right? Well, no pun intended, but literally, let's try to do the best that we can to make sure that we protect our youth. And if you're in the school setting and you're a teacher or whomever, encourage that mask use, right? If you see other children bullying someone because they have a mask, or even if they don't, okay? We want to make sure that mental health is good as well, right? That we're teaching and we're educating. And we're also examples for the youth. And I understand, I hate wearing masks. I hate wearing masks. Like I've been wearing one since March of 2020. Before they ever put in a mask mandate, I was wearing a mask in my clinic everywhere I go. Did I mention that I hate masks? With all that said, I wear a mask every single day. If my children go to their track meet and we're going to be in close quarters, I'm going to wear my mask with them. I stand in solidarity with my children because I don't want them to get sick and I do not want to give them something to where they will be sick. So I hope that you take something from this message for me, and I hope that we are all able to stay healthy and well, especially our young ones. Thank you very much.
So I am going to bring on next Dr. Rashana Hood, and she is a board certified general psychiatrist and board certified child and adolescent psychiatrist. Oh my goodness, the work that she's been doing during COVID cannot be counted. It is probably they talk about the dual pandemic, the mental health issues that have pervaded during COVID have been right alongside with COVID, and there's so much that we are wrestling with, and that she's been wrestling with. So we're so grateful to have Dr. Rashana Hood. Again, if I read through her bio, we'd be sitting here for another half an hour, but we know that she has been, she's qualified to treat adults and children. And we are delighted to have you, Dr. Rashana, with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. All right. There's some slides I want to share with you all, okay? So again, yes, I am Dr. Rashana, and I am a double board certified adult, child, and adolescent psychiatrist. And guess what? I am a COVID-19 survivor. The reason I wanted to mention that is because, as a reminder, COVID does not discriminate. It doesn't care what your religion is, your gender, your occupation, how much money you have, how old you are. It doesn't care. We have all been impacted by COVID-19. It has turned our world upside down. And the things that were going on prior to COVID, guess what? Those things have gotten even worse regarding mental health. I have treated individuals who have caught COVID, individuals who have been vaccinated, people who have not caught COVID, but they're just so anxious about and have such fear about catching COVID. I've been tasked with discussing, I guess, the emotional and the mental health component and how it's impacted us. And in that, I feel like I have to include the mind and the body and the spirit. Because our mental health, it is influenced by multiple things. It is influenced by our biological well-being. It's influenced by our social and environmental environments. It is influenced by our psychological well-being. For instance, biologically, what does that mean? What is our current physical health? What is our immune response? Do we have a strong immune response? What's our stress response? Do we have any metabolic issues? Are we dieting? Are we eating healthy? Are we exercising? That influences our mental health wellness. Our social and environment also influences our mental health. What's going on in our family environment? What's our family circumstances? There have been so many families that have been negatively impacted where there was loss of wages, loss of housing, or they didn't have access to the bare minimum. And so that can create stress and impact our mental health. Not only our mental health, but our physical health, which also impacts our mental health. And our psychological well-being. What are our attitudes and our beliefs? Do we look at things as half empty, the glass half empty, or half full? Do we have healthy coping strategies or skills? What is our temperament? All of these things are important. All of these things are important. Our biological well-being, our social and environmental well-being, as well as our psychological well-being. All of those things impact our mental health. So my tip is, number one of the tips to try to persevere during these trying times is to understand that our treatment and or our prevention needs to be from a biological, social, environmental, and psychological aspect. So looking at the diet, or are we eating healthy? Are we consuming those healthy vitamins and minerals that we need in order to build a robust immune system? Are we getting vaccinated? All of these things are important in maintaining a healthy mental status. So I figured you guys might be interested in some of the impact of COVID on mental health. And this is a statistic that I came across regarding adults. And even though this particular one is regarding adults, in my clinical practice and also in research is showing that this similar pattern is also happening in children and adolescents as well. So this study said that they did like a survey and they kind of monitored the mental health symptoms between April 28th, 2020 to May 10th, 2021. And they showed that there was mental health increase during symptoms during COVID-19 from this time period. 30.7% of adults in the US reported increased anxiety and depression. It was up from 11%. It went from 11% to 30.7%. And it's probably still climbing. So of course I gotta give you some other tips, some practical tips to hopefully help you maneuver and persevere. So tip number 2 is consider what is in your control. There are things that are in our control and things that are not in our control. But a lot of times we are often worrying about everything that we can't control and the things that we can. The problem with that is that we are expending time and energy and stuff that we can't do anything about, when that energy could be put into the things that we can do. What's some examples of things that we can control? Diet, exercise, eating healthy, taking vitamins, wearing your mask, getting vaccinated, who we listen to, how we cope, our mindset, our perception, whether we physical distance, if we seek help in a time that if we're feeling like we're mentally suffering, how we spend our time in the media consumption. Let me say that again, the media consumption, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about COVID, and it's important that you be very selective and intentional about the information source, so that hopefully we can persevere during this time. But things that we can't control, I can't control what I inherited from my parents, my genes. I can't control necessarily or determine, okay, am I gonna get mild, severe, or I'm gonna be asymptomatic? That's something that sometimes we don't have any control about. I can't control my past. I can't control what others do. Now, I can make suggestions. I can try to educate, but I cannot force other people to do things that I feel like they need to do, per se. Tip number 2, routine, routine, routine. I say this a lot to my parents who have children, but I think this is important for my adult patients as well. We are in a time of such unpredictability. Everything is just unpredictable, and it is very nerve-wracking. So if you can establish a routine, sometimes establishing routine can help you feel a little bit more secure. Structure your day the best way that you can, and your child the best way that you can. Because oftentimes the greater control that we feel we have in our lives, the less worried we may be about things that we don't have control over. I have found this to be very useful in my children, my own children, but also the children that I treat, that having some predictability is important. It can help them feel a little more safe in the world. We can't forget about the regular check-ins. This was something that was really being pushed in the very beginning when we all had to go on, on shutdown and quarantine. But this is still very relevant today. There's still a lot of people who are very isolated. And of course, there's still people that have to go into quarantine. All right. So it's important that we still maintain connections in the best way that we can, but in healthy ways. So check in not only with family, but check in with yourself. Process your feelings. How am I doing? Am I doing okay? Am I drowning? Am I functioning? Am I able to do the things that I need to do? Or am I lacking in that area? Do I need extra support? Identify people of like mind and habits. So Dr. Noor Jahan talked about how, a lot of kids, want to do stuff. They want to be social and everything. Well, identify people with like mind and habits, and perhaps you can come up with creative ways to still get the social stimulation that you need for development, but still being safe. Tip 5, it's very important that if you need help, you seek help, okay? Because as you are probably experiencing right now, we thought that maybe we were on the tail end, what some people did, of the pandemic, but with the Delta variant and other variants on the rise, we are still in it. And we may continue to have to deal with things like this. So if you need the help, you need to get it now. There's no shame in seeking out help. There are a lot of resources out there, and there's no shame in seeking out help. And guess what? You could be the one to end generational stigma. In a lot of communities, especially communities of color, we are ashamed to say, hey, I need some help. We are ashamed to acknowledge that we're struggling with depression and anxiety. And unfortunately, then things are perpetuated generation after generation but you could be the end of that. You can be the beginning of new patterns and new behaviors within your family. If you need help, if you don't feel comfortable initially seeking help from a therapist or a psychiatrist, start with your primary care doctor. And if you're comfortable, seek out a therapist. There are a lot of options out there right now. You have virtual appointments and in-person appointments. So for those who are still very nervous about going out in public and getting services, guess what? That does not have to be a limitation. And of course, you can seek out a physician such as myself who specialize in mental health issues, or psychologists, or seek out at a crisis access line. Here in the state of Georgia, we have a thing called Georgia Crisis and Access Line. Many states have facilities such as this, or resources such as this, where you can call and get help immediately, or they can point you in the right direction to what resources are in your area. And the last tip, of course, I can talk about a lot of tips, but the last tip is practice of gratitude. I have found that this has been very useful. I always have a saying, there are blessings and lessons in the test. This helps you to, in the midst of the storm, to identify what are those lessons and what are the things that I can learn from it, rather than focusing on the things, again, that you can't control. There's research and studies to show that this practice of gratitude, can truly help improve our mental well-being, our physical well-being, and our relationships. You can even start a gratitude journal. These are some things that you can do that doesn't cost any money, just a little bit of time. And another thing that I suggest to some of my patients and their families, and that I try to do as well in my own home, is at least once a week or daily, we'll kind of talk as a family. What are you grateful for? This is a time to try to still maintain those connections, because as human beings, connections are very important to us. And that is an example of that psychological aspect. I talked about the biological, the social and environmental, and the psychological. So again, just in review, some of the tips and tools that I think that could be helpful. These are not the only things you can do, but some important ones that I often reinforce and share with my patients, and I share and remind myself, is number one, I have to remember that my mental health is influenced by my biological, AKA physical health, my psychological health, my social and environmental health. Who are my social supports? So I have to, in trying to maintain and improve my mental health wellness, I am looking for things that I can work on in all those different aspects so that I can hopefully maintain optimal mental health and wellness. Remember, identify what's in your control. Don't spend so much time on the things that you don't have control over, because it will definitely feel even more overwhelming. Number three, establish a routine. Routine can be helpful and can make you feel more secure and can help reduce the anxiety. Do regular check-ins. Check in with yourself, check in with your loved ones, because some people may be really suffering silently, and that may be yourself or your loved ones. So check in, continue to try to maintain those relationships, because in order for us to get through this, we're going to have to work together together as a community. And seek help and support if you need the help. There's no shame in that. To me, that speaks to your strength, that you are willing to identify, hey, I need help, and to seek it out. And remember, you have an opportunity to create and model to your family how to persevere during these trying times. And last but not least, practice gratitude. Identify what are the lessons that you can learn from here, and what are the blessings that have come out from this. And if you practice all those tips, I think that these will be some useful tools to help you persevere while we're all going through this challenging time. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Dr. Rashana. That was a feast. I got so much out of that, routine. I mean, it's like you were in my house seeing everything that's going wrong. But you gave me some great homework assignments, trying to reboot my routines, not being ashamed of not being okay. As they say, it's okay not to be okay. I, like you, had COVID, and I went through the long haulers, and that depression just was nipping at me. And, being a part of this organization helped actually to keep my mind active and stimulated, and also practicing gratitude. I love that suggestion about having a weekly family meeting. So that's wonderful. And I just want to tell everybody that Dr. Rashana also is a mother of young children and has been plugging away while she's trying to keep her own family together and safe. So, I mean, it's amazing what we're doing, but God, the Almighty, has given us somehow the ability to do it. So, we just give thanks and praise to the Almighty, and we keep encouraging each other, as the chapter in the Quran about perseverance is a very brief chapter we know as Asr, which talks about time. But we know that chapter just encourages us to keep each other strong with accurate information, as we're trying to do, and to persevere. So thank you so much for those wonderful reminders. And I just hope that I know that everybody got something out of that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We have next, we are so delighted to have with us a scientist, actually, who has experience working with one of the big pharmaceutical companies. And he is going to give us a better understanding of vaccines, how they work. It's something that we've talked a lot about so far, but I think it's really wonderful to have someone with us that can speak about vaccines from a more knowledgeable place, because everybody talks about how quickly the vaccine was developed, and we have reason to be suspicious, but we also have people among us that can give us a little bit more confidence about using these kinds of therapeutics. I don't think vaccines are technically considered therapeutics, but these kinds of medical support. So I will tell you that Mr. Ron Foster Sharif worked for Eli Lilly and Company from 1978 to 2008 as a senior research laboratory technician in biochemistry. He conducted medical research in all major areas of therapeutic lines of research. He's won awards and accolades over several years, and he completed work that led to the making of human MPH, recombinant insulin, which many of my patients have used. He says during the course of his career, he was associated with several compounds achieving candidate selection status, with 2 compounds making it to phase 3 clinical trials. He worked on a host of projects from anti-cancer to artificial blood and endocrine research. I want to read more because he has so many accolades and so many things that he's worked. 7 years of clinical pharmacy techs at 3 hospitals. He's worked as a teacher. He's done so much, and I'm reading a little bit more of his because I think that this kind of encourages our young people to go into this area. We have a few more doctors and lawyers than we do scientists, so I think we need, even though our doctors are scientists too, a lot of people don't know that our physicians here have also been accomplished in studying science. And also I will mention that Ron Sharif is also an international photojournalist. He's done photography for the Muslim Journal. He's also done photography for the Super Bowl. So we know he is not an amateur. So thank you, Brother Ron, for coming on, and please share with us whatever you have.
Okay, well, thank you, Sister Carl. I'm not going to be too long because my esteemed colleagues before me have been very, very thorough in giving their talks. So first thing, when we deal and be clear on exactly what a vaccine is. And a vaccine is a preparation that's administered normally by injection, and it's designed to stimulate the body's immune response against a specific infectious agent or disease. Now, what we have in this case, for those that take the position that they choose to allow their own immune system to deal with the virus, you have to understand that that's exactly what a vaccine does. It ramps up the body's immune system to give a response to this invader. If you allow time to evolve for the body to naturally come up to speed, then you get into a situation where the virus will overtake the body before the body can ramp up. So that's why we have vaccines. Vaccines have been around for a long time. A lot of diseases and conditions that we have known as children that we no longer see is because of the vaccine. That includes chicken pox, measles, mumps, the different hepatitis. All these have been subdued by a vaccine. Now, what I'd like to do now is give an update on the status right now of the vaccines that are available, your options. I'm gonna confine it to 3 different types because that's what we majorly, what we're dealing with here in the United States. And that is the Pfizer vaccine, which you've probably heard of. And then there's the Moderna vaccine. And then there's the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Now, of course, there are other vaccines in different parts of the world. But we're not going to get into those. We're going to deal with these main 3. And the status of the situation now is that Pfizer has received a full approval from the FDA on its submission. So it's been fully approved. Now, the paperwork has been submitted by Moderna. Moderna tends to be running about a month behind Pfizer. So you can look for a full approval on Moderna based on the data panning out and being as effective as it looks. You can look for a approval from Moderna in about a month also. Now, there is a third vaccine on a different platform. It's called a vector platform. The first 2 were messenger RNA platforms, but the Johnson & Johnson has a vaccine out, and it's on a vector platform. I'm not gonna, for the sake of time and brevity, I'm not gonna go into the details and the dynamics of how these vaccines are put together. But the Johnson & Johnson is based on a vector system. And it vaccine, whereas the 2 vaccine I mentioned earlier, Moderna and Pfizer, are 2-shot regimen. And I don't think at this point Johnson & Johnson has even filed paperwork yet with the FDA for approval. So the time on that, we'll just have to see how that that goes. But you have three options, and they are very good options, and you really can't go wrong with any of them. You have one situation where you have the two vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna are 2 shots, and Johnson & Johnson is the 1 shot. And all of the vaccine looks as though a booster is actually going to be necessary, which comes into play because we have these different variants popping up. So there will be a booster on the 2 Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine, and probably a booster, they're saying, with Johnson & Johnson. And the thing about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is this booster tends to have more of an effect on the immune system than the other 2. So you have those actions coming up. Now, some people may say, well, why do you need 2 shots on these vaccines? Why can't you do it all in 1 shot? Well, you have to keep in mind, it's sort of like when you are asleep and you wake up when the alarm goes off. And I'm borrowing this analogy from Sister Kizzy Corbett, who's a young African-American female who actually developed the Moderna vaccine. She answered that question by saying, when the body wakes up and when the alarm goes off, normally what people will do is push the snooze button. That's the first dose. Then you go back to sleep. Then the alarm goes off again, and that's designed to get you up and going, all hands on deck. That's the second dosage, and that's what takes place in the body's response to this stimulation that it gets to make these antibodies. It's a spike protein that they make. And I'm gonna try not to get too detailed.
All right. Wow, what great information. We've heard from the mental, the physical, and even information on the vaccine. We have just a few minutes left of Taleem, and so I did want to give an opportunity for folks to ask questions about what we've learned, and also just a hearty thank you to the Muslim Health Consortium for doing this work and for being a voice for our community and an educative space for our community. And so I want to open the floor up for any questions. And I know Ifram Bahar Center, if you, Imam Omar, if you would like to say a few words, I know the believers there are watching and are unable to go in the chat. So I can pass the mic over to you. You're muted now.
Oh, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
Imam
assalam.
Naji is going to speak for us. Can we see?
Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum
How's everybody doing? Imam Lawrence Najib here at the Eastern Bar Culture Center. Just listening to all the team of doctors that we have on the panel, I think is really, really wonderful to have such, knowledge and, being able to share the information with everybody, because there's one thing, I would say, especially just in the general population period, in America, we have a tendency to have a distrust for government. And I mean, there's a legitimate reason for that, because I'm sure there's a lot of things that goes on in government that is not shared with people on exactly why the things are happening and doing, why certain officials are doing certain things. Also, during that time of the pandemic when it hit, we had one of the most distrusted president in office. When you distrust the leader at the top, it's kind of hard to distrust. I mean, it's kind of hard to trust, people under him who's working under him and for him. And that includes certain doctors and things like that. So even though I see that I'm sure the doctors, they have knowledge, they understand medicine, and, they have the trust of people, but, it still is a lot of distrust. And that's why a lot of us may shy away from, getting the vaccine and doing the things to secure our health in our family. But knowledge is what's dispel, that kind of distrust, understanding. And that's one of the things that we lack in our community, especially in the African-American community, is being able to, inform myself and connect with people who have knowledge and understanding of these things. So I pray that Allah bless us to have more, things to be more open, to people, and people with lack of understanding really get a better understanding of the thing about health. So thank you very much. We appreciate you. May Allah bless each and every one of you. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Assalam. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Imam Freak, did you have some questions or words that you'd like to share as well?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salam. First off, I want to thank Imam Dr. Ramadan for his work. I take no small amount of pride in knowing that our association, our masjid in particular, is represented in his participation, his contributions to the Muslim Health Consortium. I'm also really extremely pleased that this is an intergenerational effort. We see our elders and our younger, our youth coming together and using their talents. This is just a really wonderful, effort, a wonderful presentation. I think we should all feel really good that we're not just looking to voices from outside to tell us and to inform us, to investigate, but we are doing what we are told to do Quranically, right? Is you turn the matter over to those who have the expertise and the insight, the ability to take in information and come back and tell you, okay, this is what we have found out. I really hope that the entirety of this presentation is going to be made available so that folks are able to go back and look at it again, because I think there's so much information that was given. It requires multiple viewings and time to really kind of sit with and think about what's being presented. But I really appreciate what was shared. It's extremely beneficial, timely, and I pray, as Imam Lawrence mentioned, I pray that Allah continues to bless you and all the members of the Muslim Health Consortium and our community as well. So thank you so much for this presentation.
Absolutely, and I mirror your comments. And again, I appreciate this fourth Sunday, and we look forward to joining Ifrin Bahar Center next fourth Sunday. I'd like Imam Ramadan to say any closing words and close us out as we end in the last minute here of Taleem.
Well, we'd like to, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We'd like to thank the Taleem Committee for inviting us to give this presentation. It's indeed our honor and a blessing that we can share what Allah has blessed us to accumulate over the years and at a time that it is most needed. And we just look for opportunities to do this, and we feel blessed. And we thank you for allowing this change in your normal arrangement for the Taleem to allow this video to be shown. And yes, we will be able to make it available for further viewing. So we thank you, and we thank Almighty God Allah for another day of blessing and this blessed opportunity to share. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, dear believers. May Allah bless you all with a beautiful week. And may Allah continue to guide all of our paths. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Alaikum assalam.